This week is first week, and we'll try to complete HTML5 tutorial. Let's look at the video section here. Media and video, audio. The name is HTML media section. As I explained already, we just completed this HTML forms until here, and we are skipping this one. After learning JavaScript, we'll be back and we'll complete this one, and that's it about HTML5 tutorial. And also this one will be back after learning JavaScript. Let's start from here. HTML media chapter. Okay, HTML multimedia. Multimedia on the web is sound, music, image, videos, movies, and animations. Those are called multimedia. And this one is explained about the definition of multimedia. Multimedia or multimedia comes in many different formats. It can be almost anything you can hear or see. For example, images, music, sound, videos, records, films, animations, and so on. Web pages often contain multimedia elements of different types of formats, different types and formats. In this chapter, we learn about it. Browser supportability is important, and we'll look at. The first web browsers has support for text only. Very simple and plain. But the rich media we are using heavily every day, limited to a single font, in this case limited to a single font in a single color for this text only in that case. Later came browsers with support for colors and fonts and images. Audio, video, and animation have been handled differently by the major browsers, and depending upon the browser and depending upon the version, the supportability will be different, and we should learn about them. Different formats have been supported, and some formats require extra helper program that is called plugin to work. And this HTML5 multimedia is very helpful and powerful to support that multimedia data, and we'll learn about that. Multimedia. Let's look at these multimedia formats first. Multimedia elements, for example, audio or video, those are stored in media files. Most common way to discover the type of file is to look at the file extension name. For example, this file extension name, like this. We are heavily using this MPEG-4, and you are now watching that video that is using this file extension, this MPEG-4 file, MPEG-4 video, for example. Let's look at these common video formats. MPEG-4 is recommended by YouTube, and now you are watching YouTube video, and that format is MPEG-4. And MP4, that means that is MPEG-4. And that is supported by HTML5, and even in our Blackboard, that file, uploaded file, that format is MPEG-4. I uploaded already, and you can look at those lecture video materials in the Blackboard as well as in this YouTube. Let's look at these formats, and you don't need to worry about many different formats, just for reference. For example, MPEG, and that is developed by the Moving Picture Expert Group. That is standard body, and that initial, that is acronym MPEG, that is the acronym of that. And that is one kind among many other formats. And the AVI also you can refer just for reference. And by Microsoft WMV format, and by Apple QuickTime format, the file extension name is .mov. Those are just for reference. Let's skip, and you can refer to them. And please focus on that 3 file extension. Among them, this one is the most useful and recommendable file format, and that is developed by the Moving Picture Expert Group, and that is MPEG-4. And this is commonly used in newer video cameras and the TV hardware, and this is supported by all HTML5 browsers, and that is recommended by YouTube. And now you are watching this video that is based on that MPEG-4. And thus, please try to focus on that 3 file formats: multimedia, video especially, video formats, MPEG-4, WebM. This is developed by web giants Mozilla, Opera, Adobe, and Google, and that is also supported by HTML5. And OGG video, those are supported by HTML5 standard. About audio format, very similar, but different formats here. MIDI, if you are going to the karaoke room, and that instrument, musical instrument, usually that instrument is using this MIDI, MIDI, MIDI format, and musical instrument digital interface. But you don't need to know about this at this moment, just for reference, those are. And please focus on that 3 formats: OGG, MP3, MPEG-3, MPEG-4, and those are supported by HTML5 standard. Thus, please try to focus on that. Let's move to the video chapter first. And even though we learned briefly about the overall picture about the multimedia, including this video, and this one is explaining a little bit more in detail about the video first. Let's look at this video. Big Bug Bunny. It is real source code. This one is implemented with this real source code, and this one is new element named video. Now we are learning this. This video element is newly introduced in HTML5 first time. We can decide the size with this with pixel, and we are using this new HTML5 element source. With this one we can provide the video source file. If this one is found first and that can be supported by this browser, then that will be played. If that is not supported, then next one will be chosen alternatively. And if that cannot be supported, then this simple message, your browser does not support HTML5, that text will be shown on the screen. Okay, here with this one, this will be shown, and the bottom one is this one, paragraph, and this hyperlink with this anchor tag. Let's focus on that. We are using this video element. Here we are using this source element, and with this attribute controls, we can show this control bar. And if we are removing this one, then we cannot see that control button here. Thus this control button, I'll put in again, controls. I'm sorry, that should be written in English. Controls. Then we can see the control button here. Then we can control the video play and pause. Even there's volume and the size we can control. Like this. Let's pause here. Okay, let's move to the next. Playing videos in HTML. The HTML video element that is being newly introduced in HTML5, as I mentioned, and we should look at this supportability. From this version of this Chrome browser and Edge browser, this number is the version number of that specific browser, and from that browser, that video element was supported first time. And let's look at this real source code here. Here, as I mentioned, this one is showing the source file, and that format is different, and this one is enumerating the source, and first one will be selected if that is supported, but if that cannot be supported in this browser, the next format will be selected. Still that cannot be supported, and finally this message will be shown on the screen instead of this video. This one is explained a little more in detail about that. Controls. This attribute is showing that button, play button, pause button, volume button, and width and height that is showing the size of that video screen. And this source element, as we learned already, this one is allowing us to specify alternative video files which the browser may choose from. The browser will use the first recognized format, and if that cannot be supported, then alternatively next one will be selected. Okay, another one is autoplay attribute here. If that is being used here, then as the name means, that is self-explaining, that can be played automatically. But depending upon the device, depending upon the browser, that it may be different, but here that is played automatically. Thus it is running well. Let's try to remove this one, then let's see. Okay, after loading that video clip, it is not being played automatically because that attribute auto play that is controlling. This one is controlling that play, automatic play. Okay, let's move to next. Thus, this one is explaining some additional comments. The autoplay attribute does not work in mobile devices like iPad and iPhone. Depending upon the device or depending upon the browser, that the supportability may be different a little bit. This one is summarize the table. This one is the browser name, and this one is the file format, video file format. This one is 3 formats here. Those are recommended in our first chapter, HTML Media. In this overall chapter, we learned briefly about that. And this one is most recommendable format in terms of video format, because many browsers are supporting this one, but this format is supported by some and not supported by some other browsers, and also not fully supported. Thus, this MPEG-4 format is most recommendable. Okay, still very similar. We covered already. And HTML video, this HTML5 defines a DOM method. We didn't learn this DOM, and later we learn about it. DOM means document object model, and here our HTML tags, those are built based on that DOM, and we learn about them later. There are many chapters about them. And this event relates to the JavaScript. This especially we learn about this in the JavaScript tutorial, and that DOM is related to that. And this one is a simple example using this JavaScript here. This button we can invoke, we can generate the event handling program, and that is based on JavaScript. And this one is showing in advance how to use JavaScript in this kind of application. For example, play, pause, big, small, normal size, that can be controlled, but that was built using JavaScript. Okay, this one is the real source code for that. Here you can see this script, this section is JavaScript, and at this moment you don't need to worry about this at all. This kind of thing can be applied with this JavaScript, but even though we are not using JavaScript, we have some buttons that is supported by the HTML5 that is convenient. Thus, this is just for reference. Also, this one is JavaScript event handler, event handling function, and at this moment you don't need to worry about that. Instead of this, HTML5 simple HTML5 element, we can provide the control button as we showed already. Okay, this one is summarized table. Okay, let's move to the audio part, audio chapter. Audio element is very similar, and this is the first version number for each specific browser, and you don't need to memorize this one. This is just for reference. Here we can use in this way audio element, and like the video element, similarly we can use the source. This one is providing the audio source file. This one is a different audio format, and the first one will be tried to play first time, and if that is not supported, then next one will be chosen alternatively. Okay, here that can be played like that. Similarly, like the video element, this one is controls attribute can be used to add buttons like play button, pause button, volume button. That is almost the same as in the video element. The supportability, depending upon the browser, a little bit different. This MP3 that is supported well enough. Others partially supported and partially not supported. Also, the others are very similar to the video chapter, and you can refer to them. Also, this is the summarized table for that. We are using this audio and the source element as like the video and the source element in the video chapter, previous chapter. Those are newly introduced in this HTML5 first time. Let's look at these plugins. Plugin means the helper application program. Let's look at this. The purpose of plugin is to extend the functionality of a web browser, because the basic functionality is not fully supporting some additional program, that is plugin program, additional program that is called helper application program or plugins. They are computer programs that extend the standard functionality of a web browser. For example, Java applets. Those are a kind of plugins. And plugins can be added to web pages with the element, object tag, or the embed tag. But that is just for reference, not recommended. Later, most recommendable tag or element name is iframe, and that will be introduced later after completion of that introduction of these elements. Plugins can be used for many purposes: display maps, scan for viruses, and to verify our bank ID, and so on. Here, object element With this one we can embed the video or many other source file here, but we should use this attribute name data. Thus you should remember, but the object element is not recommended, thus this is just for reference. Okay, this is not recommendable file format, flash file. You don't need to worry about that. To include that, we can use object, and we should use this data attribute, but you don't need to worry about that. You can skip that. That is mainly for reference. Object can be used in that way. Also, object, into this object we can include HTML file in our HTML file. Thus this is embedded HTML file like this. This one is embedded here. Thus into this object there is the HTML file, and in that HTML file this snippet.html, another file, HTML file, can be embedded. Thus we should be careful about this. But this is just for reference, because those are deprecated. Later that will be introduced. Also, even JPEG image can be embedded, included like that. Okay, after closing some open tabs, let's start again. Next one is embed element. Also, in advance, I am introducing this one is deprecated, and you don't need to worry about that. This is just for reference. With this embed element, we can embed object within our HTML document. Like our previous example, this flash file can be embedded, but in different way. This is the source. Previous case was data, but in this case, the attribute name is different. Also, this one can embed another HTML file like this. Still, we should use this source attribute. In the previous object element, we should use data attribute name. Those are different. Also, we can include, similarly, like our previous case, using object element. Here we can include, we can embed that JPEG image into this source attribute name we can include. Okay, let's move to the next. Probably this one is the final chapter among these HTML media. Also in the HTML whole tutorials before midterm exam. After finishing this one, I will introduce some real application about the name portal. The domain name is wopen.com, and that is using this video, YouTube video especially, using iframe, and that will be introduced here. The easiest way to play videos in HTML is to use YouTube. How to embed that video clips or YouTube video clips we'll look at. YouTube, we should find out the YouTube video ID first. Then we can use that video ID in our HTML document. I'll show you later. And this is the sequence. To play the video on the web page, first upload the video to the YouTube, or already uploaded the video you can show in your web page. And you should find out the video ID, and I'll show you later. And if possible, this iframe element, that is the most recommendable element to show that video, YouTube video, in our web page. And we should use this src attribute, that it means source attribute, that is including that URL, video URL. And we can control the size in terms of our web page design using that width and height. We can specify the dimension of the player. And if we need more parameters, then we can add. And let's look at the real example. This one is the real example. Let's look at this real source code for that. Here, the YouTube video, and this is a video, YouTube video ID. And instead of this, okay, let's try to play first. After that, we'll try to use other video ID.
Is this the real life?
Okay, I'll try to pause here. And instead of this, let's try to bring other video, and especially the lecture video, that will be better to understand. And that video ID is being used in this web programming lecture guide bulletin board. I am announcing some assignment here, and also I announced already, and probably you might have seen this already, and those YouTube video you can watch here about our lecture. Let's click this one, and I'll show you the source code for that.
Hi, today we learn second week.
We are learning how to implement this one. So let's look at the source for that. I'll show you. In this edit mode, we can see. Here, the source code here. As we learned this iframe already, this one is being used in that way. Iframe, this one is the CSS style I defined already, and you don't need to worry about this one at this moment. After learning CSS, that is so simple. At this moment, neglect the source attribute. Here, the URL is included here. And finally, the last part, this one is the video ID. I will copy this one, copy, and I'll try to use here instead of this. Okay, I'll try to remove this and paste in here, and let's try to look at. Then we can see the lecture video clips here. Okay, I'll try to play here.
Hi, today we learn
here. YouTube autoplay. This autoplay that is not shown here, we can control whether that is played automatically or not. If that value is 0, autoplay, that value is 0, then it will not be played. If that value is 1, that means it will be played automatically after the player loads that video file. Okay, let's try to look at the real source code for that. Okay, it is not being played. automatically, even though that this autoplay, that value is 1. That means that should be, it is supposed to be played. Depending upon the browser, depending upon that implementation, depending upon the version of that browser, the supportability may be different. Even though that should be played automatically, it is not being played automatically. Thus it is not being supported here. Okay, 0 means it is not played automatically, but 1 means that should be played automatically, but it is not being played automatically, like this. Thus here we can learn, depending upon the browser or depending upon the device and the browser, the supportability may be slightly different. We should be careful about that, and we should have more knowledge for each browser, depending upon the browser or depending upon the device also. They may be different, thus we should be familiar to them. YouTube playlist and YouTube loop also, this is about the loop, or looping forever. For example, if that this loop equal 1, that means that is looping forever. For example, after playing this one and after completion of that playing, and at the end of the play, let's move there and let's look at whether that is being played
Scooter,
automatically.
yeah, Chief, remind me to stop setting up these video conferences. They're not very productive.
Be slightly different, thus we should be careful about that, and we should have some knowledge for each browser, and also we should have some knowledge about the supportability of each device. Let's look at these controls. And here in this URL, that this parameter, variable and value pair, those are attached here. And to this one we can control that control button here. If that is 0, then there is no control button here. Let's try to